true structural review. The inspiration for this discourse arises from the actions of 61 patriotic Nigerian legislators who recently signed a bill and held a press conference to ask Nigerians to review the fundamental structure of the Nigerian state with a view to possible transitioning back to parliamentary system of government. These patriotic Nigerian legislators went further to organize press conference on this issue. Before then, in 2023, 71 legislators, bipartisan, also prepared similar bill, but didn't pass until the House ended. We know that many Nigerian civil society groups, including such groups, nationality groups like Afenifere, Ohaneze, Pandev, Middle Belt Forum, have at different times talked about the need for restructuring. So as things get from bad to worse in Nigeria today in terms of the economy, insecurity, failure of governance at local level, erosion of democratic freedom, and general misdirection, the call for restructuring has become more than drowning. So it's therefore important for us to pose the question: is Nigeria's crisis mostly of its structure, or is it a problem of culture and leadership? We know from experience and from literature of development that structure and institutions matter. We also know that structures and institutions are product of human interactions and therefore revisable and capable of being utilized for good or evil. But it seems like Nigeria's structural problem have a long-running history. We recall very well, as early as 1958, 57, there was so much clamor by minorities about oppression that led to the famous Willis Commission. I want to make 3 points about that commission. First, people focus mostly on what the commission said about the fate of the minorities in terms of representation. But we forget what the commission said in terms of state police. Today, the president and the governors seem to have agreed on some compact on state police. But as far back as 1958, the Willis Commission received memoranda from Nigerians about the need to have state police or then regional police. And they concluded that it was too early, that they needed 3 years to create the protocols for that transition, which never happened. So the crisis of policing and how security and national security and justice administration is contingent on structure was already noted in 1958. Today we are talking about state police. It's nothing new. Secondly, the crisis of development of special areas like Niger Delta was already an issue in 1958, that the commission recommended a special intervention agency for the region. 3 other issues that characterized that era. First, the issue of nationality. Are we going to have a single Nigerian nationality, meaning everybody's a Nigerian, or are we going to have a multinational country? Today, we are still struggling with that. 2, the crisis of state and religion was a big issue that in 1959 London Constitution was also discussed. We settled on accommodation of religion that reflected in our constitution. Today, the question of how will Nigeria handle religious plurality is still an issue. And the final issue is the issue of fiscal federalism and productivity. there was issues around how do we enable various Nigerian communities take control of their resources, generate surplus, and contribute to national purse. Today, there's still issue of how do we incentivize production by locating opportunities and control closer to the people themselves. The Abuja School believes that apart from God, everything is created, whether it is poverty, wealth, development, underdevelopment. And we believe that at this point, we need to agree to have a deep-seated conversation. We should stop postponing the issue of restructuring, whether or not. We should stop postponing considering the idea about parliamentarianism. Let me end this welcome and this brief framework with 2 key points. In the history of political development in the world, parliamentary systems are more stable. No debate about that. Parliamentary systems theoretically have more devices for consensus building and for check and balances. There are few purely presidential systems in the world. Nigeria, the US, and maybe a couple. But if you look around the world, most countries have either a mixture of parliamentary and presidential. The second point to note is that every country must, through its history, determine the appropriate structure that serves it well. Nigeria needs to think about the structure that serves it well. We had greater economic development in the First Republic. Although we had the unfortunate civil war that truncated our development. It's on record that Eastern Nigeria, made up of today's East, Southeast, and most of the South-South, was one of the largest, fastest growing economies in the world. It's on record that Northern Nigeria, under the Northern Nigeria Development Corporation, was a very viable economy. Southwest, or what you call today's Southwest, Western Development Corporation, Western Nigeria, was a very viable economic center, not just Lagos. Today, with the exception of Lagos and such derivative economies like Rivers economy that has IGP or whatever, IGR, Akwa Ibom, it's arguable if there are any other states that are economically viable in the reasons of an economy. So there is no argument that since 1979, we have run down our economic possibilities. Whether it is a fault of presidential system of government or other exogenous factor, we have to discuss. But the evidence is clear that in terms of economic development, in terms of social development, even in terms of the democratic quotient of local governance, the parliamentary system gave us more results than the presidential system. So we start from evidence to theory, and from theory to design. So the Abuja School mission is to cause us to discuss. And today, as the National Assembly commences constitutional reform, we would plead that it shouldn't be the routine constitutional reform of 30 days to file petition, or is it 40 days, or is it 70 days? There should now be an effort to conduct a more rigorous and far-reaching constitutional change. But that must be preceded by conversations by Nigerian people and by some rigorous social science research. The Abuja School's mission is to support the search for a viable, coherent structure for Nigeria that will do 3 things. 1, create economic wealth. Today's crisis in this country, economy, is crisis of productivity. The central bank and the fiscal policy institutions may be struggling on how to manage dollar, but everybody knows that the crisis is a crisis of production. We're not producing. And we're not producing because there's no incentive structure wired in the structure of governance for people to produce. As long as our people are going to come to Abuja to receive allocations on lopsided criteria, there will be no strong incentive to grow the economy. Anybody who travels to the Nigerian communities will know that apart from capital centers and Lagos and Abuja, there are no economies across the country. There are no communities where agriculture, agro-businesses creates wealth for the people themselves. Wealth that you see in the local communities must be imported from Lagos, Abuja, or other major centers. In the 1960s, there were local economies. We need to get back to that. Number two, we need to have a structure that allows people to control political leadership. There's a disconnection between political leadership and people, such that whether it's local government, they are not elected and accountable. And that has also increased the crisis of insecurity. There are no human commitment to law and order in society. And the third and the final principle for this restructuring must be that we have to create systems that are efficient and equitable. Justice is critical. We cannot talk about restructuring Nigeria without enhancing a sense of shared values, shared equity, shared justice. That is where Abuja School stands. And so let me welcome all of us. We are generating from this conversation a set of policy documents to guide the legislators as they continue to consult across the country on whether it makes sense. That's the question. Is it time to change to parliamentary system? Is parliamentary system the solution? Is even structure the crisis, the problem? We want to receive insight from those at the high table and those of us who are here, because all of us here have been invited and chosen specially because of our expertise, experience, and commitment to building a Nigeria that is strong, prosperous, secure, just, and peaceful. Thank you very much for coming.